Hi, everybody. Welcome to tonight's webinar. Wonderful to have you here. My name is Veronica, and I host weekly webinars at the moment, not so regularly. But yes, we've made it. This is the fifth part of a webinar series about emotions. And today we're going to talk about anger, which I feel very excited about because anger is one of my most favorite topics. It's actually how a little bit my healing journey has started, or at least how it has progressed like really beautifully, because anger is usually for most people so stuck in their system and it can really make the ball rolling. So yes, let's get going. I hope you guys can all hear me well. If not, let me know in the chat. But yes, I'll share my screen and then we can get started. All right, here we go. Yes, there we go. And what I always do in the beginning is to show my conscious relationship roadmap, because I want to also to have a little bit of a framework, how sort of like this emotion topics fits into the conscious relationship school. So just a moment here. Yes, there we go. All right, cool. So this is what I have developed. And what I use when I work with clients, because I realized that sort of like these 6 stations here are always like the problem in relationships. And also if you figure it out, then you have usually a really good relationship, which I call a conscious relationship. So where we are really aware of what is happening within the relationship. And part of this is compassionate communication. This is like the foundation to everything. Then to have healthy boundaries, to know where I start and you begin. Then the divine masculine feminine, that means like how do men and women work? How does the masculine, the feminine in all of us work? Also, if it's like a gay couple, would be the same thing. Then, of course, emotions, that what we're going to talk about today. We need to know a little bit about relational psychology, just how do relationships usually work, because there's always similar patterns, even if it's different problems. And then last but not least, most importantly, self-awareness. What is my story? What is my background? Why do I react the way that I do? All right, but today, yes, it's going to be emotions and specifically anger. So I know that there's not too many here, but I wanted to ask, did anyone make it to all 5? I would find it interesting if maybe someone came here. And that is the agenda for today. So first of all, we're going to do a little bit of a recap, maybe for those of you who have not been there. What are emotions? Then we're going to talk about the purpose of anger specifically, why it is important to become aware of your anger, anger as a cover emotion for hurt. And in the end, I'm going to show you some healthy anger release exercises. Yes. All right. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Veronica. I'm a holistic relationship coach. So I work one-on-one with people, helping them with their relationship and emotional problems. But I also love to teach. And I actually am developing a course around peaceful relating. So maybe I'll talk about this in a month or so, if you guys are interested, because I always actually love also the group learning experience, because we can learn so much from each other. And yes, exactly. And my expertise is emotional healing, because that's what I did before. And you can find all those information on my website. And I'll also link it just at the end of the webinar in the comments as well. All right, cool. So let's do a little recap, So there was this webinar series had 5 parts. The first one was about what is the purpose of emotion? Then how do I feel, because feeling is actually a skill. The third one was about anxiety, and the fourth one about sadness. So yeah, I really covered like a lot of different things, but just to recap and to sort of like bring everyone up to speed. So the purpose of emotion is to be our inner compass. So basically, your emotion is very connected to your subconscious, and your subconscious all your life, like at all times, it takes information in. And so like it's sort of like a super brain, it knows exactly what to do. And also it can sense, like danger. So that's the one thing about this. So, like when people talk about the gut feeling, it is really, really important and very wise as well, because it has stored all this information that you in your conscious mind, you could not even comprehend so much, but your subconscious mind's like, and knows a lot. And so it can warn you about dangers. But of course, also sometimes, especially, when you feel like, oh my gosh, my emotions are crazy, what's happening? They actually make us aware of past wounds, from childhood, from accidents, from traumas. And they basically want to nudge us and say, hey, look, you got to heal, you got to reconnect with aspects of yourself that you have been suppressing. And that, of course, can be sometimes very, very painful. But if we follow the thread and really listen to our emotions, then we find also, we find those wounds, and then we can heal them. Yes, and of course, our emotions show us our inner truth. So, for example, if people say things like, oh, I had a breakdown or something like this, or suddenly I feel so low, it's, there's something there for you, and usually what it means is that, oh my gosh, I'm in the wrong life situation. I have the wrong partner, I have the wrong career. Something is not right and I gotta change. And your emotions will always tell you. All right, cool. So just a little introduction here. And right, so let's then talk a bit more specifically about the purpose of anger. So that was very general for all the emotions, but let's talk a little bit more specifically about the purpose of anger. So what do you guys think? What is the purpose of anger? You can either use just the chat or just unmute yourselves and speak. Don't be shy. All right. Yeah, there was one person, brave soldier, is to tell me I'm somehow thinking wrong or a story. Yeah. Aaron says a way to express. Yeah. A way to vent. Yes. You're also sort of like leading onto it. Cheyenne says similar to fear, stimulates fight or flight and justifies why to your subconscious. All right. Yes, you're so like all like edging around it. So, the reason why I'm always like, I know that I'm a very like mind-focused person, and the way I do self-development is I try to understand as much as possible, because then I can react like in a good way. I can create a good relationship to my anger, and this is why I always go about these topics to understand the background there. And Sumu says a reaction to a threat. Yes, exactly. It's a reaction, but why? Like, what's the purpose? So all the things you said, yes, are like a flavor of the reason. But so anger is designed to protect us, So like this bird here, he's probably not like thinking about it. It's sort of like this animalistic reaction. But the anger is like this explosive emotion, like sadness is like actually really soft, or like, how can I say it? What is sadness? It's more like inward, no? Fear is like constricting, like you almost can't move. And anger is boom, it's explosive. It's designed to help you get into the fight mode, to protect yourself. And there is an enemy, right? And when we feel anger, it means that our boundaries have been violated. That is when anger arises. And of course, when it comes to boundaries, you have to understand that boundary doesn't just mean that someone does something to you, but it also means if they don't do something for you, So for example, your boundaries can be violated if someone is hitting you or hurting you, but it can also be violated when your mom, when you were a child, did not give you a hug, So the not doing is also a boundary violation, because boundary, just very simple, means what you want, what you don't want, you know. And of course, for example, as a child, it can actually really, really hurt you, you know, to not get a hug, because that's what you need for your healthy development, you know, to feel secure, to feel loved, all those things. But like, let's say back in the days, you know, especially when humanity was at a stage where it was really very much like physical survival, that was mostly the thing, you know, like a fight against enemies, a fight against like wild animals, like very, very active emotion. And someone says here something. Corey says, now I understand. All right. Yes. And the thing is, though, that there is a difference between a perceived threat and a real threat. So when someone, especially when someone has experienced a lot of difficult things in the past, their nervous system is wired so much, you know, to protect themselves against danger, that very often they perceive someone to be a threat, when actually it is all right. You know, that's what we call like a trauma response or a trigger, you know. So for example, a woman that has experienced lots of, you know, sexual violence in her life, maybe she will around all men be so scared, right? Because it feels really intense for her, and it always reminds her, right? Or for example, you can, that's more maybe also like a fear example, but imagine like this typical like guy who has had a very hard life, you know, maybe grew up poor or something, and he always had to be on guard, you know. So he goes on the streets, he's like this, pum pum pum, you can already feel him, you know, being like angry and a bit aggressive. And that's the same thing essentially, you know, he sees threat like everywhere, and then maybe in a situation someone looks at him and he's like, what you looking at? And for him it's a perceived threat. So that is also part of the anger, you know, so that's really important to understand. But of course, there is also real threats. And then also additionally, which makes it a little bit harder, is that, of course, now we don't live so much in our societies here in a way where, you know, there's a lot of external dangers, but there is still a lot of social dangers, you know, because actually, like, for example, when you have grown up in a very critical and harsh family, that can be a very threatening and also sort of like socially or emotionally dangerous environment, you know. So, for example, and that could sometimes not be recognized, you know. So, for example, I had a session with a client the other day, and we were talking about the family holiday, and if some of your aunts or uncles or, you know, relatives making jokes that are, you know, because they know exactly how to make the jokes to hurt you, maybe on the outside it looks so harmless, but it is still a threat for you, you know. So that's also what's important to understand. So sort of like what we have to become really, really good at is to first of all discern, you know, what is a real threat and what is not a real threat. Where are we, you know, like overreacting, where it is a trigger, so that we can accurately react, you know, because this is the big topic with the boundaries, isn't it? That either we are too strict or we are too loose with our boundaries. Yes, but that is sort of like more modern version of anger. But also it is very valid, you know. So if you feel lots of anger because of triggers, it is still a valid emotion. It's still real. And of course, for you, it would be very important to learn how to deal with it, you know, and best, of course, to heal yourself so that you can be a bit more relaxed in life and you don't see the threats everywhere. But at the same time, also, of course, that you learn really good boundaries, because the goal of this is also not to let yourself get hurt just because you try to be really nice and be like friends with everybody. All right, is there any questions about this?
I have a question about what you said. That is so clear now for me with the anger and the boundaries, and that the boundaries, let's say, for example, I was today at the hairdresser and I wanted him to do something, and he did not do that. I could not make it, that he does it. And then I went, I mean, he did, but not all what I wanted. And I went home and I was somehow angry because I did not know why I am so angry now. No? So my question is, what should I have done? Should I have said to him, that is disappointing for me, or I don't know how to solve my own or to say how to set then the boundary.
Yeah.
What can I have that often? Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yes, I think it's a very good example. I'm sure that many people know exactly what you mean, because those are these small experiences in our everyday life, when we are like, oh gosh, why did I do that? Like, so stupid, I also still have that, also working on it. Yeah, totally. So I think, first of all, what's important to understand is that you were probably angry at yourself, for not holding the boundary. And of course, also, you cannot force other people to do anything, right? You have no control over other people's actions. But usually the anger diminishes if we feel we have done everything we can, So that, I think, is where the focus is. So to become clear, how does it feel good for me? Because of course, maybe it does not feel good to insist, and then start a big fight. Maybe that's also not the right action. But maybe if you find a way to be like, okay, what should I say that I feel like I've expressed enough, and I really, set my point. And yeah, exactly. It could be something like saying oh, I'm actually not very happy with your service, or, I would have expected other things, or this feels disappointing, but to find this way, and that is, I think, actually the boundary. So it does not always have to be 100%, but just that we feel like we honor ourselves.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, really good example. All right, guys. So, yes, what do you guys do when you feel angry? Just write in the chat. So, what is sort of your way of dealing with it, your coping mechanism? How do you? And I want to say specifically how do you try to cope with it? Because of course it's a very intense emotion.
Hi, can I ask a question, please?
Yes.
Put it. I personally, I'm not going to say I don't get angry, but I use the expression I'm upset, but I never use the word anger. And I try not to get angry because I guess for me, I just don't like to be out of control. I'm probably got a fear of what could possibly happen if I was to get angry, but I've been like this since I was a child. So I don't know if there's a problem there with me.
Yeah, so this is actually really common, especially also because you're English, and it's even culturally, because in some cultures, they are so much more expressive, like Italians or Spanish people, like Latinos and stuff. But in English culture, it's literally my emotion teacher always said, England and suppression is the same thing, so okay. It's very, very constricting experience. And then additionally, of course, it depends on our childhood, so either it could be maybe you had someone in your life who was really, really angry and you felt scared and you said, I'm never going to be that. Or you realized that, oh my gosh, if you got angry as a child, you really got punished, so you pressed it the other way. So that's usually one of the two options. And it is not natural, to not feel emotion. I mean, there's also many men, for example, there's often this gender thing, many men that say, oh, I never feel sad, or don't cry. It's the same thing, it's not healthy. But of course also, I can totally understand if you really don't feel it. But I think if you would be in an environment where you would really be encouraged to be angry in a positive way, and also people would be like, hey, that's okay, you know, like you're safe, and also we will still like you after you're angry, then maybe there would be a door opening inside of you. You'd be like, oh, actually there is something.
But if it doesn't affect me, if situations, yes, I might feel upset about it or not happy, then is it something I should really explore?
No, I mean, just do it if you like. If you know something bothers you, you don't have to force it. I think there's so many other things to do, but like I will say also this a little bit later. The only thing that I would always like, for example, if you have a disease or something, you know, some maybe like a skin disease or something that you don't know what to do, I would always do emotional work, because when we suppress, at some point our body expresses, you know, so that would be the only time.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Veronica.
You're really welcome. All right, so what you guys have been saying is become quiet. All right, move physically away from. Yes, that really makes sense. Unfortunately, I sit with it. Okay. So I sometimes try to scream, or I try to find the reason for the anger and ask him. Oh, beautiful. I just try not to. Yes. English person again, Erin. Emily says, shut down. Don't want to deal with it, at least at that right moment, as I'm not thinking clearly. I think that is, that's really good. Or I tell the anger, you must have a reason to be here. And I feel a second part who doesn't want the anger to be here. Oh, beautiful. I feel like a proud mama bear. I write it down in my journal on paper. Nice. I tell the person that I'm frustrated, or something lighter like disappointed. Either immediately or later when I'm more calm. And I explain very rationally why I'm frustrated, without sugarcoating it that much, because I also need to see how the person is going to respond to my justification. This often has more negative results than positive. Yeah, I can imagine maybe it's a little bit inauthentic and you're not getting the reaction that you're hoping for. All right, guys, cool. Yeah, I think everything you said is probably quite in the range of normal. And yeah, so thank you everybody for answering this question. All right, so now I wanna talk about why it's important to become aware of your anger. So just in chatting with the woman before, I already allured a little bit to this, but like, you know, I come from trauma work, and in my line of work, basically, very often, not to me specifically, but to other practitioners, people come that are like at the wit's end of their health journey, essentially, you know, like when nothing is working anymore, they do emotional work, you know, and it can be cancer patients, like skin diseases, autoimmune, all of this stuff. And I really believe that we are one system, we are all connected. And of course, medicine is beautiful and so important, but the emotions are also play a big role in our health. And unfortunately, they are usually totally overlooked, you know? So I would always encourage everyone to get in touch with all your emotions. And this is not just, you know, anger, like everything else too, because it can really lead to diseases, mental and physical. And the research is just so young here still. But for example, Gabo Mate wrote a really, really good book about it. I always forget the name. It's not The Body Keeps the Score, but the other one. Some of you maybe know it. Where he basically just follows people who have a certain type of disease, and then looks at their life stories, and then sort of like makes patterns, and they always have like the same sort of like emotional patterns, the same responses, the same suppression, you know. So I think it will be coming, and maybe in the next 10 or 20 years, we will really see those longer studies. And I think then the sort of like, because right now it's just very anecdotal knowledge of practitioners, no? Yes, but so yes, I would really encourage you, start feeling your anger, start feeling your emotion, and like incorporate and include it in your life, you know. And for example, if you're a man as well, because I actually coach a lot of men, and I know a lot of masculine work because my partner has been involved in it a lot, and I'm very passionate about it. And so if you're a man and you feel very low masculine energy, your anger is also connected to your masculine energy. And there's this new syndrome, the nice guy syndrome, which I also talk about a lot, when men become too feminine, and they usually have very bad boundaries, those nice guys, and they have almost no access to their anger, because most of all the time they were shamed for their anger in childhood. And so the anger and the masculinity is sort of like directly correlated. And when you think about this, you know, for example, like these super masculine sports like boxing, for example, it's a very like masculine expression. Of course, women do this also, but the women who do this, they are in their masculine energy because it's explosive, right? And so if you're struggling with masculinity, I'll encourage you, get in touch with your anger, and especially, yeah, for example, something like boxing can really, really help you. And of course, with masculinity, there's anything connected with like low libido or sexual problems, all this stuff. Yes, exactly. And but then the other thing, which I think is equally as important, is that, remember what I said before, is that we feel anger when our boundaries get crossed. But at the same time, it works the other way around as well. Anger helps us, first of all, to become aware of our boundaries, but then also to help enforce them. And of course, the goal here is, you know, not to go around beating people, but to learn compassionate communication, where you very clearly set boundaries, but in a very compassionate way. You know, you don't have to become anyone's enemy, but you are clear for yourself. Because the problem with the weak boundaries, and you know, I see this so often, is that people just get miserable and they get so mistreated by everyone else. But of course, we don't have any power over anyone else's behavior. And when we don't set the boundaries, we enable the toxic behavior of others. You know, we essentially, that's why usually then when you're angry at someone, you're angry at yourself, because you are the one who is enabling this toxic behavior. And of course, you know, this is not to blame anyone or shame anyone for the bad actions of others. But yeah, unfortunately, we have no control over other people, you know. So this is so important. Also, when you have children, teach them how to have boundaries. This is one of the best things, one of the biggest gifts that you can give them, you know, if they have very strong boundaries, because then you don't need to be so afraid that they will, you know, be, get in danger, essentially. And the other side of the coin also is that it feels so scary to have like weak boundaries. So very often people will start manipulating, you know, and will not even realize that they are not being straight with someone. They can't say directly no, so they do it in some kind of roundabout way. And unfortunately, this is also a bit of the shadow of the feminine, you know, when we are not very clear, but then we become very manipulative, you know. So for example, we try to, you know, play games in friendships or in relationships when we don't really say what we want and not want, but we sort of like, you know, like start lying or start just saying the half truth or start to build alliances and triangulating. So there's a lot of unhealthy behavior here. And all of that is really connected to your anger, you know. And of course, this has always to do with childhood, you know, what I also said before already, like so many people are like so ashamed of their anger, you know, because people tell them that it's wrong and it's bad and you shouldn't feel anger, and you're a bad person if you're aggressive. But then of course also that's not what I'm saying, you know. I'm not telling you that you should go around and be like violent people. The only thing what I'm telling you here is to start feeling your anger, because as long as you're feeling, you're not suppressing. But then, of course, what you do with it, you know, the action you take with the anger, those are two separate conversations, you know. And that is sort of like the goal of conscious anger management, is that we learn how to feel it in the body. We become aware of it. Wow, someone crossed my boundary. What has happened here? And then to be like, okay, what action can I take to actually be empowered and to actually go out in the world and have a different, better life experience? So those are two different type of things. And then you don't look like this cute dog here anymore. I tried to lighten up this topic with some funny pictures. All right, is there a question about this?
I have a question. So, you know, sometimes life can be a little bit complicated. And what if you have multiple boundaries that's not working? So, you know, you might meet somebody who is willing to work with you to resolve the situation. But if I come through with boom, 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 10 different boundaries, then they might get, you know, so discouraged or just lose interest and so on and so forth. So how do you handle multiple boundaries?
Yeah, wow. First of all, wow, you have a lot of awareness already that you feel all the boundaries. And I think that first of all, what you can always do is do like a little bit of a hierarchy, you know, like what's your most important one? Because yeah, I can totally understand that maybe someone's very overwhelmed if you come with a lot of things. And then in the beginning, for example, I mean, I don't know exactly who it is, but let's say in a new relationship, I would be a bit lenient, you know, and not always assume if they maybe don't respect a boundary or something that there is like malintent, but maybe they just forgot it or they're not used to it or something like this, you know, so sort of like be more lenient. And then of course you can also observe it and be like, okay, is it on purpose? I'll say it again, does it happen again, you know, but sort of like not be too black and white. And then I think it can be like a successful experience. And of course, also maybe ask them as well, like, so what's your boundaries? You know, what do you need from me? And then also respect that to also show that you're also willing to do the same, you know?
Yeah, I guess I have tried a combinations of things that you mentioned. And my situation is in a workplace.
All right.
And you know how that can be complicated because you could work with colleagues from a different culture, and so they could have their own cultural boundaries that's different to mine or any other person in the team. So yeah, so but yeah, thank you for your response.
Oh, and really good that you're setting boundaries at work. Yeah, that's very, or trying. That's very, very important. Yes. And Cheyenne says, similar to Nicole's comment, I almost always seem to get punished when I communicate my boundaries and stick up for myself and my beliefs. I do tend to sensitively ask about theirs as well, more and more recently. Yes, yes. So I think there's like sort of like, there could be also like a twofold thing. So one thing, the first thing in these situations that I always would check is like, how actually is my communication? Because I was for a long time convinced that I'm such a good communicator because I'm so sensitive and, you know, and I actually communicated so bad. It was like a bit embarrassing talking now about it. So check it, you know, like maybe ask a friend that you can really trust for, you know, like honest feedback or something, because sometimes I think we, you know, we experience ourselves as the scared little child we are, but on the outside we are maybe like dragons or something, you know, so we're not getting the reaction. But of course, the other thing that also could be happening is that you actually have a part of you within yourself that is, for example, not believing that you should get the boundary, or that is like antagonizing you, you know, and that the other person like mirrors this for you. So that could also be happening, that there's something like within you that actually is like against you in a way, you know. I mean, these parts are never against you, but there could be some twisted beliefs. So, for example, I don't deserve to get what I want, for example. Could be something at play here. All right, guys. Cool. So now I want to talk also a bit about like the deeper. Oh no, we have one more question. So yeah, don't worry about this. No one can win here. So the question here, and you can just answer it in the chat, is how strong do you feel anger on a scale from 1 to 10? So yeah, so how is that for you? So for me, I think it's a 6 to 7. I'm a passionate person. So how is it for you guys? 7 to 9, well, also someone passionate. 8, 7, 7 or nothing. Yes, yeah, you're welcome. Okay, we have 5 people here. The other people are slower. The ones are like, Erin has no idea. She's like not even has any access to anger. It's just like a 0. You're probably like a 10, suppressed 10. Nice. All right, good. Okay. Yeah, so I think that's also a little bit of a difference, and maybe also that's a good question to ask in relationships, because sometimes like someone who feels anger very small is together with someone who feels anger very big, and then it can lead to problems because the two is thinking, why are you freaking out like this? It's like scary or unnecessary or something. And the 8 is like thinking, oh my gosh, like either, you know, they think I'm crazy or something, or they think like, why are you passionless? And, you know, are you not annoyed about something? Especially if, for example, I always start ranting about society and how messed up everything is. And my partner like, okay, Veronica, calm down. And I'm like, why are you not ranting? The world is going to shit. But yes, so he's just a little bit different than me, you know. So yeah, just to give you that little input as well. All right. Here. All right. So now I wanted to ask also a bit on a deeper level to understand that as well. So that in emotional work, we say anger is a cover emotion for hurt. So what does that mean? So when our boundaries get crossed, right? What really happens as well is that it's very, very painful, you know. So someone doing something that hurts us, or someone, you know, not doing something that we want, like giving us a hug, is painful, painful, painful. But of course, you know what I said in the beginning, that anger was designed to protect us. It doesn't help us, you know. So imagine like back in the days, you know, you go through the savannah and then there's a tiger, and then I don't know, they like, maybe that's a bad example. I think when a tiger bites you, then you're like dead. But let's say something else. Okay, you go through the savannah and then there's another tribesman and he starts to like hit your son, and then you feel a lot of pain. In that moment, you're like freezing. Shoot, it doesn't help you, right? What you have to do is feel really angry and explosive, go over there and like start fighting that other tribesman, right? So anger helps us survive, you know. But the pain is also there, and it's important, for example, when you do anger work, that at some point you go there, you know. So for example, maybe a very classic example is also when someone has been like beaten as a child. They will have a lot of anger towards the parent, naturally, but also then at some point they start crying because of course there's a lot of pain, you know. How could you do this to me? Like, I trusted you, you were supposed to protect me, you know. So it's like both there. But I also want to say this here, also especially for the women, because crying alone is not helpful to release anger, you know. So in emotional release work, yes, at some point you will cry, and that's good. But if you don't have access to your anger, try to get the access, you know. Because yeah, as I said, it's very common that women don't want to feel anger because they have been shamed for it and they find it scary, so they rather cry. And men the other way around, you know, they don't want to cry, they find it vulnerable, and they don't want to be weak and soft, so they just stay in anger. But it has to both merge, you know. So that is the ideal situation, that you can first express the anger and then cry it out, and then you're gonna be like super released, and everything is gone from your system, essentially. And I think there was a second point that I mentioned. Yes. But of course, to reach this level, because this is the deeper level, and this feels very, very vulnerable for many, many people. So it requires a level of trust. But in relationship, it's, you know, that you are at a very good place when people can show this, you know, when maybe first they are really angry and afterwards they can show the pain underneath, you know? And so in relationships, this is like a classical example where there's a lot of perceived threats that are not real. You know, imagine this classical fight that starts, you know, very stupid, like one person said they would do the dishes, then they don't do it. Then the other person gets super triggered because it reminds them of when they couldn't count on their parents in childhood. And that's a perceived threat to them, right? Oh my gosh, it's like I'm back in the house. I'm so powerless again, you know, I can't count on them. So it's a perceived threat. Then they get angry. Then they start saying to that partner, you're just useless, you know, you never do anything. Then they feel that you are being aggressive. They feel shame, you know, they feel unnecessarily attacked. They feel anger, right? Their boundaries have been crossed, and then they start attacking you again. So this is like the sort of like the core of peaceful relating, is to get away from this horrible vicious cycle where both people are just in their defense mechanisms, you know. And so the goal here would be that, you know, when the situation happens, that afterwards you can talk about it and both say, yes, I was angry because my boundaries have been crossed, and this was the pain underneath, you know. And then, wow, you feel really connected and you see each other, you know. And then, of course, at a later stage, that these situations happen less and less, that you don't need to unnecessarily like fight about these small things. Yes, but yes, it is a big thing for people to let you see this. And yeah, especially also men, you know, because it is very vulnerable to admit that there is some pain underneath my anger. So when it happens, really feel honored and also acknowledge this, you know, and do not like take this vulnerability to, for example, take another blow at them. That would be like the worst misuse of trust that you could ever do. You know, if someone is just being vulnerable and tells you this, and then you use this against them, that's like horrible. You know, you destroy like everything essentially. Yes. So is there any questions about this? So the anger is a cover emotion of hurt. Remember this. And you can also, when you go through life and you see angry people, like remember this a little bit, you know, also with children, like remember this. Oh my gosh, there's always pain underneath, you know, there's always pain, even if I really can't see it, but there is pain in that person. And then will also help you to be more empathic and to open up to them, you know. And not maybe to, because of course anger is scary, or sometimes we are just like, oh, so annoyed at them. But it helps us to be more empathic towards them. Yes. And Anna says, what about jealousy? Yeah, so jealousy is essentially very similar, you know. Jealousy, I guess, is more connected with fear, you know, the fear that someone will take something that is mine, or someone will leave me. You know, that is essentially what is jealousy. There's also a lot of vulnerability underneath, essentially. And of course, yeah, but I think it could also then be connected with anger, no? Because someone is so jealous that they get really angry at you, maybe when you did something that they don't want you to do, or something like this. So again, the hurt is underneath. And here I think this is with jealousy is a very good example, because as you can see, usually in a situation, there's a lot of different emotions at once, you know, fear, anger, and then the pain as well. And then if you work through it, then hopefully at some point you can go all the way to understanding and connection, actually. And that would be the goal. Yes. And Tess says, I cover sadness with anger. Is this normal? Yes, exactly. So this is really, really normal, because again, you know, think about your childhood. Maybe sadness was too vulnerable for you, you know, maybe you felt so like unsafe being sad that you were like, okay, I'm just going to be angry. And that helps me, because of course, anger is much more like you show the world like that, your angry side, you know, but you're not showing them like the part of you that is so vulnerable and small. That's why many people, for example, also when they get really hurt, they don't show it, no? They like have like this iron face, and inside they are like dying of pain, but they don't show it on the outside, no? So yes. and Anna says, I feel angry and I'm jealous. Yes, exactly. So it really makes sense, right? So it's about this boundary being crossed, or what you perceived, you know, like, but of course, here you can see that the boundary for you is like, could be actually a very subjective thing, you know, because let's say you struggle with like really intense jealousy and you don't like it at all when your partner even leaves the house, you know, then of course, it's not a boundary that you can't really, you know, expect them to withhold. And I think in this case, I would say that there's probably some things that you need to heal within yourself, you know. But of course, you know, I don't want to put this in your say that you are like this, but I'm just saying like that the jealousy and the anger, I think it's very common to have that combined. All right, cool. So now I wanted to talk a little bit about releasing of anger, because I think this is where many people struggle with, which I really understand. Yes, so there is many different theories about this. And one of my clients once came and he said he read a book which is called Anger. And then he said that in this book, it was like not advised to express the anger, which I think is a fair, you know, like argument or viewpoint. But in my experience and how I work with people, I do the exact opposite. So I'm all about expressing, but in a way that you cannot harm anyone, you know? So what that essentially looks like is really how you would probably think it looks like. And that is expressing physically. So for example, in my healing journey, I for 1 year or even 1.5 years with my boyfriend, we did this almost like every 2 weeks. We would get together in the living room and we had some pillows and we'd put on some like, you know, music. For us, we really like drum and bass, but maybe some rock or hip hop, whatever gets you into this energy. And then we just started to like madmen, like hit the pillow, you know, like, whoa, like hit the pillow, hit the pillow, hit the pillow. And then we would also scream into the pillow because, you know, we lived in Amsterdam at that point. So we're like in the city. But of course, if you're in the countryside, it's also really nice just to scream, you know, when your neighbors don't think that you're like mad. Yes. And what that does essentially is release rage that you have probably had since a child, because many of us, you know, already as children, we get told to be quiet, to not do that. Like there's no reason to be angry. Stop it. You're too loud. And it becomes stuck in your system, you know, and this is part of the reason why so many people are actually so childish these days, you know, because if you cannot release those emotions, you just get stuck, you know. And in some way or the other, it sort of like blocks you. But also, for example, especially for women, but also for men, because my boyfriend, for example, he struggled with the masculinity, and for him, it freed up so much energy within themselves. And, you know, so many times in his life, he was like a really like sort of like guarded guy, and he was constantly self-conscious. And this anger work, you know, it like freed him up, and it was like, okay, it's all right if I cry. I can be myself, you know, I can be here, and it's okay, and I can sometimes be a bit crazy, and it's all right. You know, so it's like this super permissive experience. But then also for women, what it does, what is really amazing, is that actually you feel very, very empowered, you know, because there's this typical thing that, you know, that all the studies show is that women, when they get into sexually violent or, you know, any violent situations, they freeze. And a big part of this is also that they are not so used to, like little boys, to sort of like do the fighting, you know. So in my own life, it has made me feel so much more empowered, you know, to feel like my own power, you know, and to feel like I have this anger, you know. And also with screaming, like for such a long time of my life, my scream was just like stuck. I was like, I almost couldn't get out, you know, because I was so used to that. No, it's not okay, it's not allowed. And so it's sort of like a freeing of yourself. And the feet stomping is also something that is a very like, so that is especially for people of trauma when they're like 2 or 3 years old, you know, because this is the just the terrible truths we say, right? But it is because the child develops its own personality, and the stomping the feet means protest, and it can be really healing to do that. Because now as an adult, you can express it, no one is telling you anymore, no, it's not all right. So it actually goes even deeper, just to release some anger, but it's actually very healing. And the shaking, what I say here, this is part of the biodynamic meditation, which Osho, the crazy Indian guru, was really famous for this, that people still do this in his temples. But also in many different body-focused therapies, it is used, because what the shaking does, so that's why I put the picture of this dog, is that it's a natural trauma release mechanism from the body. So for example, when children who are still more inhibited than adults experience a very traumatic situation, for example, they have witnessed this in war situations, when children were in the bunker and the bomb were like flying, then they would start shaking just involuntarily. And dogs do the same, when they have experienced a traumatic event, they start shaking. It just happens. And why that is because the body can integrate trauma, so the trauma does not get stuck, because trauma is actually not what has happened to you, but how you process the experience. And with the shaking, it helps you to process, to process. So the dog will not be very traumatized because he has still this natural reaction, but unfortunately as adults, we are so constricted in our bodies that we don't do it. So the shaking is sort of like where you are inducing this trauma release mechanism. And Matt and I, we did this, like, it was so good actually during the lockdown, because how much trauma has happened during the lockdown, right? Like with so much uncertainty and not being able to see people and so on. And we did it for 3 weeks, every day for half an hour within a group via Zoom call with music. Wow. And it was so interesting because so much in our life was moving and flowing, and I believe it was connected with that, because our body was moving, like I think lots of stuff that was stuck there for years suddenly became unstuck. Yes, and so that is that. And of course, I totally know that for you guys, this is like a little bit theoretical, but if you'd like to try this out, I actually have created a video, and it is part of my online course, but I'm giving it to you guys for free. So I'm just posting it here in the comments. So it's the last one, it's called Anger Release Video, and you can see what I'm doing, and maybe it will inspire you, because it's actually like a follow along video. So you're super welcome to do that, and I'll get a bit crazy there, so it's also nice to see other people and to see that I'm not mad. I have done this for many years. I'm still totally able to be in my logical mind, but I also have this other part of me, and it is okay. It's like, it's a more primal expression of ourselves. Like that's actually what anger is. It's more primal, but it is totally okay. And at the end of the day, when you do this, you become more peaceful. And that is the big secret about this. That is what is called conscious anger management. You're not trying to constrict yourself, to push it away, And that's what I've been telling you guys all these 5 webinars, right? Don't push away. Don't try to get rid of your emotions. Don't try to control them or kill them, but start feeling them, start taking care of them, start taking responsibility for them. Express them in a healthy way. You see, this is 2 completely different ways of doing it, but this one will not make you aggressive or violent or something. It will make you actually more peaceful, because you don't have any suppressed anger. And always when we hear of people suddenly having this like crazy anger attacks, or like suddenly killing their spouse or something, these are very often the people who have been holding it in and trying to suppress it. And then at some point, they just snap, and it is really intense, So yeah, I really encourage you guys to start exploring this. And also if you have the chance, because for me, it really helped me to do this in groups as well. And that's actually one of the things that I want to do in the future. Like I want to start doing emotional workshop weekends, but especially also for anger. And I hope that my boyfriend maybe at some point does like a facilitator training, because we know, like, you know, how to do it a little bit, but in the group it's still a little bit different. And I think it would be so wonderful because he's also a great guy. And he's also very calm. So I think he would be able to make people also feel really safe, because that's very important. So yeah, whenever I'm planning maybe for next year, I think that could be very, very cool. And Tess says, why are some people more angry than others? Yeah, so there's different reasons. As I said, like, whatever you were shamed for in childhood, you are more likely to suppress and not show. But then also, for example, maybe something was also more okay in childhood, you know, so you're a bit more natural in childhood. But then, of course, also, you know, different people have experienced different things. Some felt super, super powerless in their life, and it makes them so angry. Yes, so those are essentially like the two answers. And Corey says, do you do that online? Yeah, I want to do it in person because I think it would be so powerful, but it's just plans for me right now, you know. But yeah, maybe I could also think about doing like an online workshop. But of course, you know, it is more powerful when you have someone, especially if someone has a lot of blocks, you know, because then you can talk with them and be more gentle. Yeah, exactly. Maybe I'll do one in Germany, Corey. Yes, the whole Europe tour, bringing the anger everywhere, releasing the people. All right, guys. And yes, also, if that's something you're struggling with, of course, you're also really welcome to contact me. I also put that in the comments. So I do the emotion coaching, where I help you with all the emotions, but of course also with anger. And that is actually a topic that I talk a lot about. And yeah, people always seem to find it really valuable. But also if you have very strong emotions, or if you feel like you're always suppressing, and then of course also how do I communicate about this? That is also an important part that people are always forgetting. And yeah, so just check it out if you're interested. And also, guys, yes, if you like this webinar, consider buying me a coffee, supporting my work. I would really like it. I would really be glad if you do that. And yes, is there maybe a last question about this topic today? Cool. You guys seem to be satisfied, and that's really wonderful. Then yeah, thanks so much for tuning in. And so the webinar series has now finished. And for those of you who maybe want to repeat some, there's also recordings, and also I still do like 11 a.m. sessions together with my Australia group. But yes, afterwards I will, I think, repeat a few of my other webinars. For example, I scheduled one for end of the June for empowerment and self-responsibility. Maybe you're interested in that and would be glad to see you there. Okay, guys. So
hi, Veronica.
Yeah.
Can I just ask, you mentioned there's recordings. Where would we find the recordings, please?
And I always post them in the event pages and otherwise on my YouTube channel. So
when you say events page, what do you mean? Events page, sorry.
If you have participated in the last events, I post them always in the comments. But you can just, I can just put here my YouTube channel if you want.
Okay.
Would it help you in the comments that I'll put it there?
I still don't know what you mean when you say comments, on the comments.
So for example, like, you know how you access this webinar is through a link, and there's always a description, and there are like comments.
Oh, right. Okay. I've not noticed it before, but I'll go and have a look. But thank you. But also the YouTube would be good. Yeah.
Can you access the comments here in the chat on the Zoom call?
Right, let's no.
All right.
No, I can't see where that is actually. I can see the chat. Do you mean the chat?
Yes, the chat. I'll post it there. Just give me a second.
Oh, right. I'm with you. Sorry. Okay.
No problem.
You. Thank you.
Let me see how I'll do that. I'll just do that like this. Just a moment. I'll just copy and paste this. Yes, so there's all the recordings there. And then the one from this week, I'll post it like tomorrow when I've uploaded it. And then, yeah, you have all of them. So you can rewatch them. Yes, there you go. You can see it? Yeah. Okay, cool. I think it's fine. Okay, guys. Good. Awesome. Have a wonderful evening and I'll see you soon, guys. Bye-bye.